there's two reasons I'm making this video today. The first is, as you know, maybe now, my name is Jill, and I want to say this is the first post-boom video, so thank you to Diamond from Oppenheimer Ranch for recommending me, and for those of you willing to wander over, take a look, see if this might be a good fit. So welcome. And the second thing I want to talk about today is a little bit about what we talked about in our conversation, and that is what it means to be on YouTube. But the question I'm really asking is, are you preparing for your post-YouTube life, a post-YouTube world? I think it's a legitimate question. It's a little bit of what we talked about, but I want to just flesh it out here, give you a little bit more clarity on what we're actually doing here, ask you a question, and before we do that, what we do over here is we take a deep breath and then we see you on the other side. So I had reached out to Diamond over at Oppenheimer Ranch for a couple different reasons, but one of the big reasons I did was because, like you, this whole idea of a catastrophe, it's a little bit overwhelming, and I am really trying to find my little niche in this very big problem. And one of the things I know to be true for me is I am not an expert in the science of catastrophism, but I am an expert in human and their reaction to crisis and chaos. And so the first thing I really wanted to toss out there, as I'm just trying to weed through all this mess of information and what I can physically and realistically do and possibly contribute, is where we really have this idea that we're trying to prepare and get ready for the crisis. The biggest issue is really the chaos leading up to it. And so when I talk about ideas like train and prepare, I'm really talking about who we need to be as we move into what could be the end of this world as we know it. I don't think it's as important about what's going to happen as a final crisis event, but as I've said in some previous videos, as this idea sinks into the psyche, which it has been for some time, that as we can see out in the world, people are getting more and more unbalanced. The foundation beneath our feet is getting less and less stable, and the best skills that we could really have is how to navigate in that uncertainty and instability. So that's really where I have a level of expertise. And one of the best comments or feedbacks I've gotten from doing the last videos these last 2 weeks, as I'm shifting focus on this catastrophism pretty much exclusively as an extreme way to train and prepare. But the bottom line is everything we talk about applies to your everyday life. It's just got a different focus to it. But some of the feedback I've gotten that's the most reassuring, which is the second reason I reached out to him, is there's sort of an ability to say, okay, I'm able to think about this in a different way that's not so overwhelming. Because that's one of the biggest splits I see, is that people are very focused on the crisis itself. That isn't the part that you have to be worried about. The concerning part is everything that's going to be leading up to it and the instability that goes there. And it's very difficult to process a big idea that we have no human frame of reference for. I mean, it's one thing to talk about the end of your life, which is traumatic enough, and we are fairly disassociated from that. It's a whole nother ballgame when we're talking about this idea of the end of everything as we know. So when I talk about a new epoch, which I have in several of my videos, it's everything that we knew will be different in what is next. So even if people survive this event, it won't be the same. And I think there's a lot of us, especially those of us who are older, we're really here to be part of that transition process. We're not here to be a part of what's coming next. And so part of the reality is making peace with that, to think, well, you know, this isn't something I'm probably going to come out on the other side of, but how do I create purpose and meaning and value in my life now and in the process of whatever's coming? So when I ask that question, how are you preparing for your post-YouTube life? There's a couple of things happening. One is that we really see censorship ramping up. Two is that YouTube has been a centralized force for a very long time. And in much the way that we used to have just 3 networks, they could do whatever they want, right? They dominated. YouTube has dominated for so long that when it stops being a primary hub for everybody, which it pretty much has, you're going to see a mass decentralization, and I doubt there's going to be another format like YouTube that's going to emerge where it'll be a main congregation hub. I really see the future is going to be being able to find individuals that have the information you like and who's curating that information that is in the genre or the information that you're interested in. But I see that also as us having to take a lot more personal responsibility for how we go out and get our information. And you know, one of the reasons I have talked about for some time on this channel is I am planning a future that says I am no longer on YouTube. So I am not creating videos to be a YouTuber. I am using this format as a bridge till I can get off of YouTube. And one of the reasons I want to toss that question back to you is to ask you that question. How are you planning on getting your information, learning your skill set, connecting with others of like mind if we were to move into a post-YouTube world? What is your plan? Have you thought about it? Because the last statistic I read this morning was that the average person, and this was a small study, it was just about 2,000 people, but we've seen these studies over and over. Right now, the average amount of time an adult in a non-working environment is spending in front of a screen is almost 7 hours a day. That's as much time theoretically as we're sleeping and theoretically going to work, which means all of our non-sleeping, non-working time is putting ourselves in front of screens. I think that's pretty dangerous. And so one of the things I've been working on diligently behind the scenes is how do we create face-to-face time? And so that brings me back to just asking you one more time. Are you, or how are you preparing for your post-YouTube life? And what I'm doing is I'm doing two things. One is I'm creating the 18 Crossroad, which is the website where I'm calling it Training and Preparing, about how to be both human and survive and be useful. I believe our future lies in our humanity, not in our technology. And a lot of the basic skills that we have as humans is how to connect and how to speak and how to work together. I mean, that's a real skill set that we're losing. We have this inability to handle conflict. I also saw recently that when younger people are looking at romantic partners, they're more interested in their politics than if they're even attracted to the person. When did that happen? So in addition to that website, you know, my goal is to move into making documentary forms so that people can use them. And that was another reason why I wanted to reach out to Diamond, was he's got so much information. It's very difficult to come in as a new person and catch up. And that's one of the problems I have. I have, you know, 40 plus years of gathering information. How do you synthesize that and present it to somebody as time feels very short? So I think that part of this YouTube transition is getting off of more information into better, higher quality, more synthesized content, bottom line, rich information that allows us to catch up in a quick way, because people just aren't reading anymore. So it's really difficult to ask somebody to read a great big long book. People will watch movies, and so I really see that as the future, is to create longer forms, you know, any for 1 to 2 hour movies, documentaries, films, whatever you want to call them, to synthesize information and then use that as the ability to start the discussion. So those are my two plans. I wanted to toss that question back to you though. How are you preparing for a post-YouTube world, with or without electricity? That's the other thing I like to talk about, but we won't do that here. In terms of where you're going to get your truth, how are you going to still share stories, and how are you going to still learn skills? Those are really important questions. So I'm just going to offer that back up to you as something to think about. We're going to take one more deep breath for the road. You'll find links below. Again, I want to say welcome if any of you are still here way at the end. And with that, we'll see you next time.